trying to address the larger challenge of broadband access in the state. What the third and binder did was, and what it was designed to do, is build that, think of it as the state highway system, to build the capacity into the regions and into the communities, such that it could then be built upon to get into the local municipal roads and ultimately to people's driveways and into their homes and businesses. To date, before then, there's never been an open access. Anybody can lease at reasonable rates and reasonably equivalent rates in the state of Maine, unlike some other places. In fact, you could go even farther and say some of that has existed in the very, what we call in Maine at least, urban areas. You could lease dark fiber in Augusta South and various parts of the state along the I-95 corridor, but it made no sense for anybody to build that out into the rural communities based solely on the rate of return. That's where the federal government in the BTOP program, funding 80% of that effort, really gave a kickstart to the project.
Is that funding still available?
That funding has been fully spent, and the project's been fully completed. I know there's representatives from Maine Fiber Company here that could speak more directly to it, but that whole BTOP program was a stimulus program, and that's all been fully executed and closed out.
Well, to follow up on that, you mentioned that the different costs from Frenchville to Wall and whatever, and the network has tried to normalize that. Do you see that working in a public sector? I mean, we're going to have the same problems.
What that starts to get to is there is an advantage to scale. You see municipalities starting to look to plan together, much like Rockport and Rockland recently addressed. What we find with MSLN is when you approach the entire state as a single project, in that case, you're able to justify spending more to get down to the end of that peninsula or out to that island or into that very rural part of the state and balance that off with the lower cost of getting to, Portland or Bangor or whatnot. I see that, in these efforts very much the same way. If you try to focus just on the town center or a specific small section of the community, you lose the opportunity to average that cost out across the entire community. And that's where I think governmental planning comes into play. The private sector does what the private sector does very well, and it should be part of this, but that part of that public-private partnership is to balance the goals of rate of return and equitable and ubiquitous access throughout the community. That's where I think bringing the two together really adds value.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Fletcher Kittredge.
This is that's mind if I give it to you now?
You staying to speak on that anytime?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I'll grab it.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Senator Wood, some members of the committee, my name is Fletcher Kittredge, and I'm CEO of GW1. And we are all in this room because Maine is behind compared to the rest of the country in this area. And I would point out that there is an advantage to being behind. By being behind, we can look at what other places have done and learn from that. Some of the things we can learn is we can look and test the idea that this actually results in economic activity and economic growth. And there are new studies out that show that these superior networks result in a slower rate of rural depopulation, which is a problem that besets all the country, or maybe even reversing that, and results in greater economic growth in rural areas that have superior broadband networks. We can also do something which is we can see what national providers do. We can check what they tell us here in the state of Maine and what they do and what they say in other places. We can look at how other people got their systems funded and look at that. But one of the most important things we can do is we can look at failures and we can look at successes, because all of these methods of funding, all these business plans have had failures and successes. There have been municipal broadband projects that have failed, and there have been municipal broadband projects which have been great successes. There have been private industry that has failed. Does anybody remember a company named Adelphia? There have been great successes. It is the implementation that usually makes the difference. And why this bill is so important is that it was a different year 10 years ago, a different world 10 years ago when ConnectME was set up. I was there when it happened. And think about this. These things didn't exist even in the laboratory. Facebook, no, when ConnectME was set up. YouTube, an enormous amount of tablets. There were no tablets and all those. It is reasonable that to know that ConnectME has done a good job, but at the same time, it's necessary to reset things. It's also true that if you look at the failures, they usually come for lack of planning, a lack of clear identification of what the goals ought to be. And it is really appropriate that there be a nonpartisan, technology-neutral center of expertise in the state and in state government, and you should not be spending a lot of money until the state develops that expertise, because it will inevitably be wasted. So ConnectME Authority is only 2.5 people, and they don't have the ability, without spending more operational money, to do a good job on allocating or spending the money. So I really hope as strong as much as a mistake it means, that you will strengthen, do the study and strengthen their authority. So thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions for the gentleman? Yes.
Thanks, Mr. Kittredge. I'm really interested in this assertion that the for-profit entities, and I don't want to get into specifically who the for-profit entities are, but just broadly speaking, what doesn't Maine offer to a company to make money providing this service?
Okay, so I'm going to talk about. I'm not sure if anyone's here for TDS, so I'm going to talk quickly about TDS. TDS is considered a national leader in this area. And what I notice, and I don't have the details, is they have done their rural upgrades in response to significant subsidies, I think frequently from the stimulus package a number of years ago. So Maine does not have that money. I'm not even sure it has that amount of money to spend, but you need that sort of support to make the business plan work. The other big thing is competition. You cannot go to a set of people and ask them to upgrade, and there's no financial advantage to them because they're going to end up with the same revenue they already have. But if they have competitive pressure to do what they have to do, I would ask you to look at Atlanta. Atlanta has gigabit service from Google Fiber. This is announced or being built. Gigabit service from AT&T, who did that because Google Fiber announced that they were going to have to. And 2 gigabit service has been announced by Comcast. They're going to double down and do it. This is one city in the U.S. Comcast is a provider in Maine. They've announced that they're going to build, I believe, fiber to the home, 2 gigabit service to 18 million of their 22 million customers. And I don't know, but it's possible that the missing 4 million would be the greater Bath Brunswick region and Kittery and Elliott, which they serve in Maine. Maybe, maybe not. But it's competition and it's subsidy.
What, give me some sticker shock.
Okay.
What do you just estimated it would cost for Maine to get set up there and get going?
I think would be the order, to do the entire state, or, okay. I can't tell you what the steps would take because I don't know what they are. But to do the entire state, I'm thinking you're talking order of a couple $2 billion. But that's how much, that would, there's already a flow of private money serving private network providers that maintain a network that's of that size now. And fiber networks, which is one way of doing this, and you'd only use wireless because it's cheaper, so it should be cheaper than fiber, is actually cheaper than the older copper networks when it comes to operating costs. It's just the build-out needs to get funded somehow. But there is ongoing revenue that if you did it through private means that the private companies would then use to do it.
Yes.
Just a very quick follow-on. So is there something about our structure that does not engender competition?
Yeah, bad demographics. There's not a lot of money to be here, so you don't here. So when new entrants look, if you look at Google, has just done this huge rollout, or either announced or actually done across the nation, millions and millions, and it's all in those dynamic 1 million to 3 million resident cities. All of them. I think Kansas City is the furthest north. They're all south. Thank you.
Page classes?
Senator Woodstone and members of the Joint Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Technology. It's the first time I've been to a testimony like this, so I don't think I'm going to do as well as I really could. I have a lot of information to share from what our town has gone through, and I'd definitely be happy to follow up later with better information. I'm coming from the town of Arlesville, which is a small island down off the coast, and for us the problem is more than just not broadband. I could share stories for hours, like other people are, of the pain that it's causing us, but for us it's a real threat to our community, where we need to keep young people on the island and we need to keep more young people moving to the island, or our school can close down and then from there everything just plummets. So this threat has been facing us for a while, and consequently, I think probably 4 or 5 years ago, I joined with an economic development committee where we explored what kind of things can we approach to fix this problem on the island. And broadband was one of the primary issues that came out of that. And so from that, 4 of us started a what we call a broadband working group. And by the way, my testimony definitely differs from what I'm talking about now. There's a lot more detail in there that you can read later, but from listening to what's going on here, decided to deviate. So that has been a real challenge for us, and we started a discovery process of trying to figure out where to go. And in that process, ConnectME Maine was very helpful to us, but in some ways they were restricted. They didn't have enough resources, but also what they were doing was helping us to put in patches of solutions for some of our problem, not a comprehensive whole solution. And that was where, for a variety of reasons, we couldn't qualify for some of the funding. We finally came to the conclusion, after what I would consider, looking back, wasting a couple of years of trying to figure out what do we need to do, we came to the conclusion that we need to fund a real study to figure out what is our problem, what are our options, and what do we have here now. And that we hired the Tilson Technology Consultants to help us. We went through a long process of looking at our options, and at this point we're coming close to trying to find or try to implement a solution, or try to get a funding from our people to implement that solution. And this is the kind of process that I think LD 1063 would do to help a lot of small Maine communities. Plenty of them are struggling, don't have the resources it takes to find out about the solutions, and they also don't have the technical know-how in these small solutions. And we have a lot of retired people and a lot of blue-collar people. Those communities don't have what they need. ConnectME Maine was extremely helpful to us, but mostly what they could do is point us in the right direction. And what I came to find was there's larger towns that have plenty of population to fund things. There's towns with anchor institutions like Rockport where they can get other funding, but there's lots of towns like us, we're on our own. So that's part of why, at this point, I strongly urge that you consider what's being talked about in this bill to help support the smaller communities and the state as a whole. From my perspective of coming through this, the planning process was absolutely critical for us to move forward with a solution. We needed real information to stand there, to be able to talk to existing providers, to say, what can you do for us and what will it take for us to get you involved? And without a plan, that conversation, first of all, never happened, but even when they did, there was no teeth in it, it went nowhere. So that plan was the only thing that moved us forward. And the funding, of course, is critical. If there's no money for it, nothing happens. So there has to be funding for the plan, but the follow-on from there has to be funding for the implementation. For us, we looked at breaking it up into two pieces, the capitalization to build the network, and then the revenue stream to run and operate. And I think, each town's gonna have to find their own solution, but we're right now trying to say, we're gonna build a municipal network that has the structure on our island to serve our community, and then bring in a professional provider to run and operate it, which we think will help serve our community well now and in the long run. And that was certainly part of what we wanted for our solution, was not a patch, but something that, once we realized what kind of money we had to spend to get it fixed, we wanted to spend that money once and live on it for years. So I think that's a brief overview of where we've come from. There's plenty more, like I say, and I'm certainly happy to follow through later on with additional information, but now that I've come here and seen what this is about, I understand a little better.
Thank you so much.
Any questions?
Representative Ragusa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for coming. And I'm wondering the status of the Islesboro project at the present. Is there a referendum, or what's how's it going to be funded?
It's currently, we have a town meeting scheduled for the May 30th, which we just pushed out because we have some questions that we're trying to answer, the best way to put together our warrant article. So indeed, that's what we are contemplating right now, is we want to have a $3 million, up to a $3 million bond to help us get the whole design done, the build, put it in place. And so that's what we're preparing to approach the people. Now, we are under some question right now whether we're absolutely going to do it on May 30th or a little bit later. But that's our next step, is to get the community to commit the funds, because there are no funds elsewhere. We've looked around. For our community, we're on our own.
Because that seems to me to be sort of a risky path, that it's either it passes or it doesn't, and then if it doesn't, there's nothing. And so that's kind of what I think we should be careful of avoiding, that that there is some kind of incremental approach to a path forward, rather than the fork of the road.
Yeah, we struggled with that issue early on. The first part to me is not taking action. That is risk of our community imploding, and we're really looking at, like, we've got to do something. In terms of the greater state looking at that risk, I think, well, I have some real thoughts, but it just escaped my mind. So I will have to follow up with you on that. But I certainly look at it like, I think it is the best way to go. If we get the people to buy into it, no problem, we go. If they don't, well, then we're going to have to look for another solution.
Thanks.
Representative Shan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your testimony. Question on, just for clarification, particularly true in most rural areas and towns without anchor institutions. Can you speak more to that? Does that mean that because you don't have necessarily a hospital there, that isn't the one that's being serviced, or what does that mean within the context of your experience?
Yes, excellent question, and that feeds back to what I put out on your answer. Some of what we came into, well, first, what we're talking about here is, yes, we don't have any other anchor institution, anything with funding or ability to bring some more money to the table, more power to get this problem solved. What we have is a number of homeowners, small businesses, who, they have pain, but where's the revenue? Where's the funds? For example, with Rockport, they had additional funding coming from the main system and from the college itself, and then some from the town. Whereas in our town, we have a tax there. So that's certainly some of the problem. And then with respect to the risk, that was some of what we looked at. Was the idea was, we have to build a comprehensive system. We can't just incrementally step in. For us especially, our problem is we have an island community, so we're far away, so we have a lot of expense up front to build this system, to get it in place, and then if you're incrementally doing it, you're just doing little pieces, and you still don't have the revenue and everybody on it. So we just couldn't find any incremental way to move forward. The major cost was to get into the system, and from there, it was small costs moving up. So that was why we concluded at the end, it's pretty much all or nothing. We're going to solve this problem, or we're going to look to see what the damages are going to be.
I applaud you and Hillsborough, the people of Hillsborough. I would think that for the success of the greatest state of Maine, that each community's buy-in would be critical. And I'm a firm believer in if you've got money involved, it's going to work better than if you don't have money involved. So I hope the communities will listen and use you as an example. And I wish you luck. Anybody else have a question or comment? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, and there's one final comment with that. I definitely agree money needs to be involved, but I strongly feel it's the planning part up front, otherwise that money can disappear and you still have nothing. Thank you.
Dan Sullivan. Dan Sullivan.
Senator Woodson?
Thank you.
Ken?
Your wife called you and
She was going to come with me today, but I said, you've got her number, so that's not a problem. Members of the committee, I wear a lot of hats when it comes to broadband in Maine. I'm the chairman of the Washington County Fiber Initiative. I'm also a member of the Maine Broadband Coalition. But today I'm here to speak on behalf of my employer. I work for Woodland Pulp and St. Croix Tissue up in Baileyville. Got my presentation in front of you. I'm the IT manager there. I've been in the IT business for 30 years. I've been the IT manager for 15. And my management and our employees and the people in our area truly support the reworking of the ConnectME Authority. We think it needs to be addressed in a different manner, and we're in full support of this bill and all broadband bills. The company that I worked for in 2009, when the Americans that owned us, they closed us. They put 330 people out of work. There was 6 people left there. I was one of them. 6 months later, our new owner came up and said, we want to purchase that place. So they did. They purchased Woodland Pulp. They then infused millions of dollars. The first thing they did was go to natural gas, which was better for the environment, better for energy costs. They then invested in equipment. They hired employees. They just consistently added more and more to our business. Now what they've done is they're going to put another $120 million in building 2 tissue plants. We started construction in about a year. If you'll turn to the 3rd page in what I gave you, I thought a picture's worth 1,000 words. I took this picture yesterday of what's going on at Woodland Pulp right now. You can see structural steel going up. That's a big deal. But it's more of a big deal that what you see there is a commitment from a company that is willing to invest in that area. We're going to add 80 more high-paying jobs, and they're talking about possibly more in the future. But what that does for us, when you look at that structural steel, what it says to our teachers, our students, our elderly, our fire department, it says, we got a company that's going to stay here. We're going to pay taxes. We're going to pay you so you can pay taxes. We're going to contribute. And that has changed the attitude in Woodland amazing. Because we could have very easily been a Bucksport. We were a Bucksport. We've hired 4 engineers right now from Bucksport. So we've put those guys back to work. The issue that we have at Woodland Pulp right now is we're a 24/7, 365-day-a-year operation. We deal with companies all over the world. Our sales team has to be able to communicate with our customers 24/7. 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon makes no difference. We're on the global economy. We're working 24/7. We have to be able to connect. Same way with our logistics teams. They handle our product. They ship our pulp through rail, through truck, through ships, and our raw products coming in. These guys need to communicate. So what's happening in our particular area is we can't attract high, intelligent, smart engineers and keep them because their homes, they can't connect. And one of the first things they ask me, they come into my IT department, is, Danny, I need to connect into the Pi system to watch the environmental data coming down at 11 o'clock. I'm on a satellite, I'm on fixed wireless, I'm on DSL, none of it works. It can't sustain that business. I'm going to read you a quote from our vice president here at the end. It really sums it up. But in the end, what's happened in our area is we've received a number of ConnectME grants that have since 2008. The ConnectME has spent around $9 million, and they've put grants everywhere. And they've built fixed wireless networks, they've built DSL, they've given it Time Warner, and built out those networks that we're now living with, and they don't work. We can't communicate. We have to have a higher data rate. We have to have a higher data width in order for us to be able to communicate. That is through fiber. It is the only future-proof thing we can do, is to put fiber in place. Yeah, I know I said this last time, and it probably drove you all crazy, but in our opinion, as you look at the ConnectME Authority and how you're going to change this, you're going to be thinking about the network that we build. Don't we want this to last 100 years? But we're not going to come back and do this again. If you work a wireless solution and the radios have to be changed, you're going to send the guy out your tower. You have to change that radio out. That's an expense. Same way with DSL cabinets. It's just, it's not sustainable. So anyway, I had my, what did I do with my last piece? I'm going to have to do it by heart, I guess. Our Vice President, Mark L'Italian, he asked me to make a statement here. And in it, it's at the end of your document there, so I'll just synopsize, is that he feels that true super-fast broadband is critically important to the existence of this mill and the St. Croix tissue mill. And I emphasize that, critically important. He is trying to attract workers. He's trying to pay people, trying to keep them in eastern Maine. ConnectME has got to be worked a little different. When a provider comes and says, we're going to take care of this place, in our opinion, they need to say, well, then build them a future-proof network. Don't give them something that doesn't work, because that's just what's been taking place. So anyway, in closing, I think Representative Rikerson left, but I'll just state that he was talking about studies and all this kind of stuff. We've seen the studies. We've given J.W. Sewell almost $2 million to build us maps that don't work. And as a guy in this room, I don't know if he's speaking here today, but he told me once, as an ISP provider, he says, Danny, we don't need maps, we need networks. And he's right. So I will take any questions, if anybody has any. And I'll be quiet.
Yes.
I congratulate you for success, and it's wonderful to hear about the growth of the mill. I mean, are you in a, I'm trying to think of the right way to ask this question. I mean, we're a long way from getting fiber to your mill there in St. Croix.
Where are you?
And you feel like 1063 will at least make some progress towards it?
I think what in my opinion, wearing this IT manager hat and representing that company, is that we need to address the problem, and the problem is lack of futuristic broadband. And if this state were to take all of its resources, coming from the FCC, coming from USDA, from the TIF funding, like Tim mentioned, any grants, any money that the state itself is going to put in, any bonding issues, in my opinion, where I was sitting on the ConnectME board, I've talked to the providers in this state. I've talked to Time Warner. They've got fiber everywhere. I don't know if you understand how this works, but if you drive down the road, every time you see a little piece of orange, it's a piece of fiber. So when you're in your house 75 feet from that little piece of orange and your network shuts down and it queues and it doesn't work, you're 75 feet from the future. So it's everywhere. If we were to take these companies and get them in a room and say, this is the mission, we're going to take all the resources we've got and we're going to build a fiber network. We are going to stand out in this country. We could do this. It would be slow. It would be expensive. These companies are going to do this in the end. I guarantee you they will not sit with their copper networks. They're going to do this in the end. And in Woodland Pulp case, to get back to your question, because my wife calling yet, we're going to struggle. We're going to struggle. And it's just an HR nightmare for us, because we get engineers that come in and they stay for a little while and their wife doesn't like it, or they don't like it, or they can't get, the connectivity is a big piece of that. They leave and then we have to retrain them. It's expensive.
Thank you so much, Dan. Any other questions or comments?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Rick Bates.
Senator Whitson, members of the Joint Committee. My name is Rick Bates. I am the town manager of Rockport, Maine, Maine's high-tech harbor. I'm here to testify in support of LD 1063 and support of LD 1185 and any other bills that will help move broadband forward for Maine. I believe that for us to build the next several decades of economic security in Maine, we all need to think big, really big. Our world is changing faster than any of us can imagine. All of the old rules of economic development are quickly going out the window. We've seen a dramatic shift in the way people work. Senator King said it best when he said, The internet allows us to work where we live rather than live where we work. This frees us from geography. We would be hard-pressed to find a better quality of life than we have here in Maine. The key is in making it so that people can work from this beautiful place we all call home. Internet access is critical. Not just fast internet, but blazing fast internet. Mediocre is not good enough for our future, and it's not good enough for us to be competitive in the global marketplace. Maine Media Workshop was able to stay in Rockport and be competitive in the digital world because of the fiber we installed. Fiber was essential to their future because the work they do is so data-driven. Today, cameras and other media are being developed that will need all of the gigabit service they currently have now. Dream Local, a Rockland marketing and social media company, is thriving and doing business not just in Maine, but all over the country. They chose their location specifically because of its proximity to the three-ring binder and high-speed fiber backbone. Rockport has gained national attention for our dark fiber model, the first municipally owned fiber network in the state. It provides internet access at my desk of not 25, not 50, not 100 megabits per second, but gigabit speeds. Last tests at my computer produced speeds of 800 megabits per second, both down and up. I'm not a technology guru. I don't need to be. This is not a technology question. This is a public policy question. The key to bringing real change to Maine's internet is not to settle for small incremental changes, leaving us behind the rest of the country and the rest of the world. In Rockport, our select board is committed to taking bold steps. We have started planning now to expand our network to every business and resident in Rockport. We are not thinking if we build it, we are thinking when we build it. Rockport is also a founding partner of Next Century Cities. This is a national organization that has grown from our original 30 members to over 80 and growing every week. Members include Chattanooga and Wilson, South Carolina, who were the subject of a recent FCC ruling, and cities like Portland, the other one on the West Coast, Boston, Palo Alto, both Kansas cities, Santa Monica, and Little Rockport, Maine. Santa Monica is now providing a city-owned 100 gig fiber network. I'm going to say that again because I didn't believe it when I heard it. They're providing 100 gig fiber network to the businesses in that community. 1 gig was just not fast enough to keep up with the needs of their business community. These leaders in broadband delivery are not thinking small. They are pushing the limits to provide gig services to their businesses and residents. If we have any hope of being competitive in the global marketplace, we need to take bold action now. We need to start moving to and providing tools necessary to get the job done. The legislation you're considering today is a very good start at that. We need to take steps to plan, and that's what this legislation does. I urge the committee to vote ought to pass on LD 1063 and LD 1185. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Bates. Any questions? Yes, Representative Hayes.
Your community comes up often in conversations, and I often hear the naysayers, if you will, go, well, that works in Rockport, but they're different, they're unique.
You like to think that.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you are, obviously, but the question is, can we make other communities unique, which is the real challenge. So when I represent a community of Mile, Maine, a very depressed community in southern Piscataquis County, and they ask the question, you know, could a Rockport or a South Portland or a Sanford work here in Mile, Maine? Can that model work in rural Maine?
I believe so. I think the key is in changing the way we think about the internet. One of our select board members, she hit it right on the head with her comment. We put in a 2,000 feet of sewer line in Rockport last summer. It cost us in the vicinity of $650,000. We put in 1.5 miles, 1 mile and 3/10 of fiber, and it cost us about $70,000. We got a lot of bang for the buck. We have a lot more things going on. A lot of attention is being paid in Rockport because of that infrastructure investment. And we don't think twice about thinking about spending money on sewer. We don't think twice about spending money on roads. We don't think twice about spending money on water. Internet fiber is every bit as important, or maybe more important than some of those other infrastructure needs.
Good point. Any other questions, comments? How much would you say you have spent thus far?
It's been in the vicinity of about $70,000
That's
so
it.
far. Ballpark guesses it may cost us as much as $4 million to do the whole town. And we're starting that study now, the study for the feasibility analysis and the financial modeling.
Would you think that putting the word out, maybe through Maine Municipal or somebody like that, that, hey, towns, cities, municipalities, you need to start thinking about this and setting some money aside? I mean, if we're gonna do something, yeah, let's all get on the same page.
Right. It is a little surprising that more municipalities haven't gotten on board with this. The challenge for many municipalities, as was just expressed, is coming up with the cash, coming up with the money to get started is the big hurdle. And that's why this bill, 1063, is so important, is we had a regional discussion about looking at a regional solution, and there were 10 towns and cities in the room. 2 of us ponied up the money. The rest, it was more money than they were willing to spend. You know, when you're facing, all of the problems towns and cities are facing, it's a tough hurdle to get over. But if you can get the planning grant, get planning money available, get the plan done, and then people can start to see, wait a minute, we can do this. It is possible.